I'm Alexis Morgan, 34, and last Friday, my mother called to explicitly forbid me from attending their 40th anniversary celebration. No explanation, just cold finality in her voice. That night, as I scrolled through Instagram with tears blurring my vision, my sister Charlotte's post appeared showing our entire family smiling together. But it was the unfamiliar woman sitting beside my father that made my blood run cold. Suddenly, every unexplained rejection, every family secret whispered behind closed doors made perfect sense. This stranger was the key to understanding why my own family had erased me. Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, and if you appreciate raw family stories, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Trust me, you'll want to stay for what happened next. It changed everything I thought I knew about my identity. Growing up in our suburban Boston neighborhood, the Morgans were the picture of a close-knit American family. Our red brick colonial on Maple Street was where neighborhood kids gathered for my mother Diana's famous chocolate chip cookies and my father Robert's backyard barbecues. My older sister Charlotte, younger brother Thomas, and I spent summers camping in Vermont and winters building snow forts in our yard. Family meant everything to us, at least that's what I believed. I was always particularly close to my father. While Charlotte inherited our mother's artistic talents, and Thomas was the family athlete, I was Daddy's little financier accompanying him to his investment firm on take-your-daughter-to-work days. He beamed with pride when I graduated with honors in finance from Boston University and landed my first job at a prestigious firm in Manhattan. Moving to New York was the first time I'd lived more than 20 miles from my family home. At first, weekly calls with Mom became our Sunday night ritual, and I drove home at least once a month for family dinners. Dad and I would discuss market trends while Mom prepared dinner, with Charlotte showing off her latest paintings and Thomas recounting football highlights. The first sign that something had shifted came about 3 years ago. My calls began going to voicemail more frequently, and when I did reach my parents, conversations felt strained. Mom would rush me off the phone, claiming she had bread in the oven or company arriving. Dad, once eager to discuss my latest investment strategies, became monosyllabic and distracted. During my monthly visits home, an inexplicable chill permeated our once warm family gatherings. I'd enter the kitchen to discover conversations abruptly halting, family members exchanging meaningful glances. "Just discussing Charlotte's gallery opening," Mom would say dismissively, though Charlotte's uncomfortable expressions suggested otherwise. I noticed my mother's criticisms becoming sharper, more frequent. "You work too much, Alexis. No wonder you're still single," she'd comment over dinner, though my career had always been a source of family pride before. "That outfit does nothing for your figure," she'd add, despite complimenting identical styles on Charlotte. Dad, once my greatest champion, began avoiding one-on-one conversations. When I asked his opinion on a property investment, he shrugged and mumbled, "Ask your boss," before walking away to refill his drink. This from the man who once spent hours teaching me to analyze investment portfolios. Thomas and Charlotte followed our parents' lead, their loyalties clearly shifting. Charlotte would text me about family brunches only after they'd occurred, with weak excuses about thinking I was too busy to attend. Thomas, once my confidant, started responding to my texts days later with brief impersonal replies. The most hurtful incident occurred during last year's Christmas dinner. I'd stepped out to retrieve my mother's gift from the car when I overheard voices through the partially open kitchen window. "I don't know why you insisted on inviting her." My mother's voice was sharp with disapproval. "She's still our daughter," my father replied, though his tone lacked conviction. "Is she, Robert, really? Every time I look at her I see—" "Not now, Diana," Dad interrupted urgently. "She'll be back any second." I stood frozen on the snowy path, the carefully wrapped crystal vase suddenly heavy in my hands. What could I possibly have done to make my mother question whether I was truly their daughter? The conversation haunted me for months afterward as the family distance widened into a chasm. I analyzed every interaction, every potential misstep. Had my career choices disappointed them, was moving to New York viewed as abandonment? I sent thoughtful gifts, made extra visits, even offered to help Thomas with his college tuition, all met with polite indifference. Something fundamental had changed, and I couldn't identify the catalyst. By the time spring arrived, I was exhausted from trying to decode my family's behavior. During Easter dinner, I watched my relatives interact warmly with each other, while maintaining a careful emotional distance from me. When my aunt asked about my promotion, Mom immediately changed the subject to Charlotte's upcoming art show. I caught my father watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher, something between guilt and resentment. That evening, as family members gathered in small conversational groups, I noticed a middle-aged woman with honey blonde hair speaking intently with my father in the corner of the living room. When I approached, they separated quickly, my father's face flushing as he mumbled an introduction. "Alexis, this is Catherine, an old family friend." Catherine's calculating appraisal made me uncomfortable, her eyes lingering on my features with unusual intensity. Within moments, she had excused herself, and my father disappeared into his study for the remainder of the evening. I left that gathering with a gnawing suspicion that the stranger somehow connected to the family's treatment of me, but I couldn't imagine how. The mystery would remain unsolved for months, until a single Instagram post shattered everything I thought I knew about my place in the Morgan family. The gold-plated compass had belonged to my great-grandfather, a naval captain who navigated treacherous waters during World War II. I'd discovered it in a Boston antique shop 3 months earlier, and immediately recognized the Morgan family crest engraved on its case. The shop owner explained it had come from an estate sale years ago. After authenticating it through family photographs, I spent weeks having it meticulously restored, imagining my father's face when he held this piece of our heritage in his hands again. The velvet box sat on my coffee table as I called my parents 2 weeks before their anniversary celebration. I'd already requested time off work and booked my train ticket to Boston. Mom answered on the 4th ring. "Alexis," she said, her voice unusually formal. "I was actually about to call you." "Great minds," I laughed, excitement bubbling in my voice. "I wanted to confirm what time the party starts on Saturday. Should I come early to help set up?" The silence stretched uncomfortably before my mother cleared her throat. "About that, Alexis, your father and I think it would be better if you didn't attend the celebration." The words hit like a physical blow. "What, Mom? I don't understand." "It's a small gathering, very intimate," she continued, her tone businesslike. "We've invited only our closest friends and family." "But I'm your daughter," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Robert," I heard her call away from the phone. "It's Alexis. Can you take this?" My father's voice replaced hers, somehow both gentle and immovable. "Alexis, we think it's better this way. For everyone involved." "Better for whom?" I demanded, tears streaming down my face now. "Dad, please tell me what I've done wrong. Whatever it is, I can fix it." "Nothing can be fixed, Alexis," he said with finality. "Some situations are beyond repair. Please respect our wishes on this." "Can we at least talk about this? I don't understand." "There's nothing to discuss," he interrupted, his voice hardening. "We've made our decision. Goodbye, Alexis." The call ended, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. My hands trembled as I immediately dialed Charlotte's number, desperate for answers. "Hey," she answered casually. "What's up?" "Charlotte, Mom and Dad just told me not to come to their anniversary party." "What's going on?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, high and desperate. "Oh," she paused. "They mentioned they might do that." "And you're okay with this? With me being excluded from a family celebration?" Charlotte sighed heavily. "It's complicated, Alexis. Maybe if you had made better choices, things would be different." "What choices? What are you talking about?" I demanded. "Look, I've got to go. We can talk after the party, okay?" She hung up before I could respond. Thomas wasn't any more helpful when I reached him an hour later. "It's Mom and Dad's anniversary," he deflected. It's their call who to invite, but they've invited the entire family, cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone but me. I was shouting now, panic rising in my chest. Maybe there's a reason for that, Lex, he said quietly. Maybe you should ask yourself why. I've been asking for months. No one will give me a straight answer. Look, I'm late for practice. We'll talk later, okay? The call ended, another door slammed in my face. I sank to the floor of my apartment, the velvet box containing the compass clutched against my chest. My entire body shook with sobs as I tried to make sense of my family's complete rejection. The isolation felt absolute cut off from the people who had shaped my entire identity. As my tears subsided, anger began to replace despair. I recalled the mysterious woman from Easter, the one my father had been so uncomfortable introducing to me. Catherine. Something about her had seemed significant, the way she'd studied my features with unsettling intensity. I remembered other moments, conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, old family photo albums that mysteriously disappeared from shelves. My mother's inexplicable resentment when people commented on my resemblance to my father. That evening, despite knowing it would hurt, I decided to check social media. Charlotte was an avid Instagram user, and I knew she would document every moment of the celebration. Curled on my couch with a glass of wine that did nothing to numb the pain, I opened the app and found exactly what I expected and something I never could have anticipated. The image appeared in my feed at 9:47 p.m., my sister Charlotte's perfectly filtered photo capturing the Morgan family's celebration. Congratulations to the most amazing parents on 40 beautiful years. Number family is everything. Number anniversary love. Read the caption beneath the image of my family gathered around my parents' dining table. My finger hovered over the screen, my chest tight with an ache so profound I could barely breathe. There they all were, mom and dad at the head of the table beaming at the camera. Charlotte and her husband James beside them. Thomas with his girlfriend Melissa, cousins, aunts, and uncles I'd grown up alongside, even my grandmother with her familiar pearl necklace. Everybody, except me, but it wasn't their smiling faces that made me gasp. It was the honey blonde woman sitting prominently beside my father, her arm casually draped over the back of his chair. Catherine, the woman from Easter, now positioned where I should have been looking for all the world, like she belonged. With shaking fingers, I zoomed in on her face. She was perhaps in her early 60s, attractive with carefully maintained features and expensively highlighted hair. Something about her angular jawline and the shape of her eyes tugged at my memory. I took a screenshot and began a methodical search through social media. Within 20 minutes, I had a last name, Catherine Reynolds, and enough public information to confirm she was the same woman I'd briefly met at Easter. Her profile showed limited information but included several photos at charity events in Boston over the past year, 3 of which included my father in the background. My search intensified. I dug through my own photo albums looking for any mention or appearance of this woman in family history. Nothing. Then I remembered my mother's cousin Susan, always the family historian who maintained detailed albums going back generations. I texted Susan a simple question: "Do you know someone named Catherine Reynolds connected to our family?" Her response came at midnight. "Where did you hear that name?" followed immediately by, "Does your mother know you're asking? Please, Susan. I need to know." After a long pause, "Check your email." 5 minutes later, my inbox contained a scan of a yellowed newspaper clipping from 35 years ago. It showed my father much younger with a full head of dark hair standing beside a smiling Catherine. The caption read, "Robert Morgan and fiancée Catherine Reynolds at the Wellington Charity Gala. Fiancée." My father had been engaged to Catherine before marrying my mother. This made no sense with our family timeline. My parents had been college sweethearts, married right after graduation, at least according to the story I'd heard my entire life. Susan's message was brief. "They were engaged before your parents married." Robert broke it off to return to Diana. "That's all I know, and please don't tell your mother I shared this." Pieces were falling into place, but the picture remained incomplete. I searched archives of the local Boston papers, finding another mention of Catherine Reynolds as a rising star in the marketing world, working at the same firm where my father had started his career. The breakthrough came at 3 a.m. when I discovered an old community newsletter archive online. A small announcement from 34 years ago noted Robert and Diana Morgan reconciled after brief separation. The couple, who had been living apart for 6 months, have reunited and are expecting their first child in the spring. The timing sent ice through my veins. I was born in spring 34 years ago. With trembling hands, I pulled out my birth certificate from my filing cabinet. The document I'd seen dozens of times before now seemed to hold new significance. My birth date, my name, Alexis Catherine Morgan, middle name, suddenly glaring back at me like an accusation. Then I noticed something I'd never paid attention to before. My birth certificate had been reissued when I was 3 months old with the original date of issuance crossed out. A clerical error my parents had once explained when I'd asked about it during a high school project. But what if it wasn't an error? I returned to social media with renewed purpose, studying Catherine Reynolds' features in every available photograph. The angular jawline, the slightly upturned nose, the deep-set eyes, all mirroring my own reflection. Features I'd always been told came from my father's side of the family, though no one else seemed to share them quite so distinctly. The truth crystallized with devastating clarity. My mother's coldness, my father's guilt, the family's gradual rejection. It all made sense in the context of one unthinkable possibility. Catherine Reynolds was my biological mother, and my family had been hiding this secret my entire life. As dawn broke over Manhattan, I sat surrounded by evidence of a lifetime of deception. The family photos suddenly revealed new meaning. My mother's stiff posture beside me in childhood pictures. The subtle distance always maintained the way she never quite looked at me with the same warmth she showed Charlotte. Thomas. The compass in its velvet box sat forgotten on the coffee table as I booked the first train to Boston, determined to confront the truth face to face no matter how painful. The suburban streets of my childhood looked mockingly peaceful as I drove my rental car toward the Morgan family home the next afternoon. Tidy gardens and American flags created a scene of domestic tranquility that felt like a cruel joke against the chaos in my mind. My parents' house appeared unchanged, white clapboard with black shutters, hydrangeas blooming along the front walkway. The anniversary decorations still hung from the porch, silver and gold balloons now drooping slightly in the summer heat, a banner proclaiming 40 happy years in elegant script. I hadn't called ahead. After 34 years of lies, I wasn't giving them the opportunity to prepare more deception. With my heart thundering in my chest, I rang the doorbell and waited. Footsteps approached, and my mother's voice called, coming with a cheerfulness that vanished the instant she opened the door. Diana Morgan's face drained of color. Alexis. Her hand gripped the doorframe. "What are you doing here? We need to talk." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. About Catherine Reynolds. The name hit her like a physical blow. She stepped back, shaking her head. "You need to leave. Not until I get answers." I moved forward, but she blocked the entrance. "Robert," she called, panic edging her voice. "Robert, come quickly." My father appeared in the hallway behind her, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm when he saw me. "Alexis, this isn't a good time." When would be a good time to discuss the fact that Catherine Reynolds is my biological mother? I asked loud enough for neighbors to hear if they were nearby. Or should we continue pretending for another 34 years? My father paled, moving quickly to the door. "Get inside," he hissed roughly, pulling me into the foyer. "Have you lost your mind?" "Apparently I lost my actual identity," I shot back, yanking my arm from his grasp. "When exactly were you planning to tell me I'm the product of your affair?" My mother made a choked sound, tears filling her eyes. "This is exactly why we didn't want you at the party. You always make everything about yourself." "About myself?" I laughed incredulously. "You've been lying to me my entire life about who I am. And now you've welcomed the woman who abandoned me back into your lives while pushing me out. It wasn't like that, my father said, running a hand through his thinning hair. Your mother and I were separated. She is not my mother, I shouted, gesturing toward Diana, whose face contorted with a mixture of pain and anger. I raised you, she screamed back. I changed your diapers and nursed you through chicken pox, and helped with your homework while she was off building her career. But you were always his daughter, always looking at him with those same eyes, always reminding me. Diana, stop, my father warned, but she was beyond restraint. Reminding you of what I pressed, that your husband cheated on you, that you raised another woman's child. You have no idea what I sacrificed, she spat. Catherine shows up after all these years, acting like she has some claim. What claim? I interrupted. What exactly does she want? The front door opened behind us, and Charlotte walked in, freezing at the tableau before her. Alexis, what are you doing here? Finding out the truth, since none of you had the decency to tell me, I answered, turning back to my parents. So, Catherine suddenly reappears in your lives, and instead of telling me who she is, you decide to erase me from the family, to exclude me from your anniversary like I never existed. It was her condition, my father admitted quietly. Her condition for what? For not going public with the truth, Charlotte interjected, moving to stand beside our mother. She threatened to tell everyone about the affair if we didn't cut you out. The betrayal struck fresh and deep. And you all agreed. You chose protecting your reputation over me. You don't understand the scandal it would cause, my father argued. The damage to the family name, to my business. To hell with your business, I shouted. What about the damage to me? Finding out my entire identity is a lie from a social media post. My phone rang, Thomas calling. I answered on speaker. Alexis, are you at the house? Mom just texted me. Yes, I'm confronting our parents about the fact that I'm actually Catherine Reynolds' daughter. Want to join the party? Damn it, Alexis, he hissed. I told you to let this go. You're going to destroy everything. They already destroyed everything by lying to me for 34 years. I ended the call, turning back to my father. I want the full truth. Now. Before he could respond, Charlotte stepped forward and physically pushed me toward the door. You need to leave. You've done enough damage. Charlotte, stop, I protested, but she continued pushing. You've always been selfish, she hissed. Always Dad's favorite, always getting special treatment because you're not even really. She stopped herself, but the words hung in the air. Not really. What, Charlotte? Not really. Your sister. Tears burned my eyes. Is that why it was so easy for all of you to cut me out? Please, Alexis, my mother pleaded, her anger dissolving into exhaustion. Just go. We can discuss this when things calm down. There's nothing to discuss, my father said firmly. Catherine is a family friend, nothing more. This delusion you've concocted is just that, a delusion. A delusion with photographic evidence and timeline confirmation, I challenged. Stop lying to me. Charlotte opened the front door. You need to leave. Now. Or what, you'll call the police on your own sister? Half-sister, she corrected coldly, confirming what I already knew. My father stepped forward, taking my arm again. Enough, Alexis. This conversation is over. Together, he and Charlotte physically escorted me onto the porch, my protests falling on deaf ears. The door shut firmly behind me, the lock clicking with devastating finality. I stood there shaking with rage and grief when a gentle voice spoke from the sidewalk. Alexis, is that you? I turned to see Emily Carson, our longtime neighbor, and my mother's friend since college. She stood with a bag of groceries, concern etched on her kind face. Emily, I managed, wiping furious tears. Just having a family disagreement. She glanced at the closed door, then back to me. I heard shouting. Are you all right? No, I admitted. I'm really not. She hesitated, then made a decision. Come with me. I think it's time someone told you the truth. Emily's kitchen hadn't changed in 20 years, yellow curtains framing the window over the sink, the collection of rooster figurines lining the shelf above the stove, the oak table where I'd enjoyed countless cookies and conversations as a child. Today, the familiar comfort of the space only highlighted how unrecognizable my life had become. I've known your parents since college. Emily began setting a cup of tea before me. Her hands trembled slightly as she joined me at the table. Diana was my roommate freshman year. I was maid of honor at their wedding. Their first wedding, I corrected bitterly. Before my father's affair with Catherine. Emily's expression softened with sympathy. It wasn't quite like that, Alexis. Your parents' story is complicated. Then uncomplicate it for me, I pleaded. Because right now I don't know who I am anymore. Emily sighed heavily, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. Your parents were always volatile, passionately in love, one minute fighting terribly the next. During their senior year they had a particularly bad argument. Diana threw her engagement ring at Robert and declared it was over. But they got back together, I prompted. Eventually. But in that 3-month separation, Robert became involved with Catherine. They'd been lab partners in organic chemistry. She was brilliant, ambitious, determined to make her mark in the corporate world. Everything Diana wasn't. I listened intently as Emily continued. Robert proposed to Catherine impulsively. I think he was trying to prove to Diana that he could move on. Their engagement announcement even made the local paper. I found that I confirmed. But what happened next? Diana was devastated. She realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She fought to win Robert back and eventually he broke things off with Catherine to return to her. They married that June in the wedding they'd originally planned. Where does my birth fit into this timeline? I asked the question that had consumed me since my discovery. Emily hesitated, discomfort evident in her expression. About 8 months after the wedding, Catherine contacted Robert. She was pregnant with you. The confirmation still struck like a physical blow despite my suspicions. And then, there was another separation. Robert moved out torn between his commitment to Diana and his responsibility to Catherine and the baby you. Catherine gave birth to you in April, and for the first 2 months of your life you lived with her. I struggled to absorb this information. But something changed. Emily nodded. Catherine received a job offer in London, the opportunity of a lifetime for her career. She wasn't maternal by nature, always focused on professional achievement. She approached Diana with a proposal she would relinquish all parental rights if Diana would agree to raise you as her own. She just gave me away. The pain of this abandonment was surprisingly acute, considering I'd never known Catherine as my mother. She made what she considered a practical decision, Emily said carefully. Diana, despite everything, agreed. She'd always wanted children, and I think part of her saw raising you as a way to permanently cement her relationship with Robert. The adoption was finalized when you were 3 months old. That explains the reissued birth certificate, I murmured. Yes. Your original birth certificate listed Catherine as your mother. The new one listed Diana, and they gave you her middle name as your own, a symbolic gesture of accepting you as a Morgan. But she never really did accept me, did she? I asked quietly. My whole life I felt her resentment without understanding it. Emily's expression was pained. Diana tried, Alexis. For many years she genuinely tried. But every time Robert showed you special attention, every time someone commented on how much you looked like him, it reopened the wound. What about Charlotte and Thomas? They came later, Diana's biological children. I think she hoped having children of her own would help her feel more connected to you, would make the family feel more legitimate. But the differences were always there beneath the surface. I remembered countless small moments now laden with new meaning: my mother's stiffness when introducing me to her friends, her preference for Charlotte at school events, her distance during mother-daughter activities. But why has Catherine suddenly reappeared after all these years? And why now? Emily reached into a drawer and withdrew a manila folder. I've kept these, she said, sliding it toward me. I thought someday they might be needed. Inside were newspaper clippings, old photographs and letters, a paper trail of my fractured origins. One recent article detailed Catherine Reynolds' return to Boston after 3 decades in London and Paris, following a divorce from a wealthy industrialist. Catherine returned to Boston last year after her divorce settlement left her financially secure but socially adrift, Emily explained. She reached out to Robert, I believe initially just to reconnect with her past, but something reignited between them. "They're having an affair?" I asked, horrified. "Not physically as far as I know, but emotionally, there's definitely a connection," Diana feels threatened by. Catherine has been insinuating herself into their social circle, appearing at the same events, rekindling old friendships. I found a recent photograph showing Catherine at a charity gala standing near my father. The way they leaned toward each other, seemingly oblivious to others around them, spoke volumes. "When Catherine discovered you were still in the picture, a successful, accomplished woman, it complicated her narrative," Emily continued. "From what I understand, she'd convinced herself that giving you up had been necessary for both your futures. Seeing you thriving, especially with your close relationship to Robert, threatened her carefully constructed justification. So she demanded they cut me out," I concluded, the pieces falling into place. "As a condition for her silence about the affair and my parentage. Your father has worked decades to build Morgan Investments on a foundation of trust and family values," Emily confirmed. "The scandal of an affair and a secret biological child would damage not just his reputation but the business itself. So my entire family chose to protect their image rather than protect me," I said, the betrayal still fresh and raw. Emily reached across the table to clasp my hand. "Your siblings were raised in this environment of secrecy, Alexis. They've been conditioned to protect the family narrative at all costs." "What would you do," I asked, "if you were me?" Emily considered the question carefully. "I'd want the truth acknowledged. Not necessarily publicly, but within the family. Secrets like this poison relationships from within. They've already cost you your place in the family." An idea began forming in my mind. Catherine threatened exposure to get what she wanted. Maybe I need to use the same leverage. "Be careful, Alexis," Emily cautioned. "Catherine is manipulative and calculating. She's had decades to perfect her skills." "So have I," I replied, my resolve hardening. "I'm a financial analyst. I uncover hidden problems and solve them for a living." I gathered the documents, thanking Emily for her honesty. As I prepared to leave, she handed me one final item, a sealed envelope. "This came for you," she said. "At your parents' house about a month ago. I was collecting their mail while they were on a cruise. Your mother instructed me to throw it away, but I couldn't bring myself to do it." The return address showed Catherine Reynolds' name and a Boston address. "Whatever you decide to do," Emily said, "remember that family is more than biology. It's about who chooses to love you consistently and unconditionally." I tucked the unopened letter into my purse, my next steps becoming clear. It was time to meet my biological mother. The Beacon Hill Cafe Catherine had suggested for our meeting exuded old Boston money, copper tables, leather chairs, and waiters in crisp white shirts who addressed regular customers by name. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a corner table with a view of the entrance and the street beyond. My heart pounded as I rehearsed the questions swirling in my mind. I recognized her immediately when she walked in, the honey blonde hair now expertly highlighted to disguise gray, the confident posture of a woman accustomed to commanding attention. Her Burberry trench coat and Hermes scarf screamed European sophistication, setting her apart from the typical Boston clientele. Catherine's eyes scanned the room, landing on me with a flash of recognition that confirmed everything. She saw herself in my features just as I now saw echoes of her in mine. "Alexis," she said smoothly, extending a manicured hand as she approached. "Thank you for meeting me, Catherine." I deliberately avoided any familial term. "I believe you have some explaining to do." She settled across from me, arranging herself with practiced elegance. "I received your message. Rather direct, weren't you? I know you're my biological mother. Meet me, or I go public with the truth." "I learned from the best," I replied coldly. "Isn't that exactly the threat you used against my family?" A slight smile played at her lips. So they've told you everything. I'm surprised Robert had the courage. Robert didn't tell me anything. Neither did Diana. I figured it out myself after being explicitly uninvited from their anniversary celebration. You're doing, I understand. Catherine signaled for the waiter, ordering an espresso with the casual confidence of someone used to being served. I simply suggested that having us both there would be awkward. They made their choice. After you forced that choice, I countered. Why now? You've been absent for 34 years. Why suddenly appear and demand I be erased? The waiter delivered her espresso and my black coffee. Catherine took a deliberate sip before answering. I never intended to disrupt your life, Alexis. When I returned to Boston last year, I simply wanted to reconnect with old friends. Running into Robert at the Wellington fundraiser was unexpected but significant. You're in love with him, I stated flatly. Catherine's laugh held no warmth. Love is for greeting cards. Robert and I share history, chemistry, intellectual compatibility. We always did. He's married. Has been for 40 years. To a woman who was always his second choice, she replied sharply. Diana trapped him with emotional manipulation and social pressure. Our connection was genuine. I leaned forward. Is that the story you've told yourself all these years, that Diana stole him from you rather than that you were his convenient distraction during a rough patch? Her expression hardened momentarily before smoothing into practiced neutrality. You have your father's directness. It's refreshing, actually. Stop deflecting. I want to know why you gave me away. Why you chose your career over your child. Because I was realistic, she answered without hesitation. I was 22 with an offer from an international marketing firm that would launch my career. London, Paris, Tokyo, opportunities most women my age could only dream about. Motherhood would have derailed everything. So, I was disposable. You were given to parents who could provide stability, financial security, and social standing. I made a practical decision that benefited everyone. Everyone except me, I countered. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up feeling your mother's resentment without understanding why? To constantly sense you don't belong in your own family? Catherine's eyes narrowed. Diana agreed to raise you as her own. If she failed to honor that commitment emotionally, that's hardly my responsibility. You abandoned your child and now you're playing the victim. I was incredulous. I gave you opportunities, she corrected. The Morgan name opened doors that being raised by a single working mother never would have. You attended elite schools, traveled internationally, launched a successful career. Would you have preferred growing up in a series of apartments with nannies while I built my career? I would have preferred the truth, I said firmly. But that's not why we're here. I want to know what you're doing with my family now. Catherine's polished facade cracked slightly. Your family? You mean my former fiancé and the woman who took my place? I mean the people who raised me regardless of their flaws. She took another sip of espresso, gathering herself. When I returned to Boston, divorced and starting over, seeing Robert again was revelatory. We reconnected intellectually, emotionally. He confided his disappointments, his regrets. Let me guess, his biggest regret was not choosing you. I didn't bother hiding my skepticism. Actually, his biggest regret was allowing Diana to drive a wedge between him and you. Catherine's smile turned predatory. He told me how Diana poisoned your relationship over the years, how she subtly encouraged your siblings to exclude you. He feels tremendous guilt about that. The barb struck its target, reopening wounds still raw from my confrontation with my family. But something felt off about her version of events. If he feels such guilt, why did he physically remove me from their home yesterday? Why choose you over me? Catherine's expression shifted to one of feigned sympathy. Oh, Alexis, you confronted them. How unfortunate. You've always been impulsive, according to Robert. Emotional like Diana. It's what's held you back professionally. The deliberate manipulation was breathtaking. My father would never discuss my career with you, wouldn't he? We've spent quite a lot of time together this past year. He's quite proud of your analytical skills but concerned about your lack of strategic thinking. The Morgan investment VP position you're hoping for, he doesn't think you're ready. The revelation that my father had discussed my career aspirations with this woman sent rage coursing through me. What exactly do you want Catherine to replace Diana? To erase all evidence of your abandonment? To rewrite history? She leaned forward, dropping all pretense of warmth. What I want is simple. I want what should have been mine 35 years ago, Robert, free from Diana's manipulation and guilt tactics. And I want to move forward without the complication of a biological daughter appearing in society pages beside him, raising questions about timelines and paternity. So your condition for silence was my complete removal from the family. I merely suggested that having us both active in their lives would create unnecessary complications. They made their decision. And now what's your endgame? Catherine's smile returned cold and calculated. Robert is unhappy and his marriage has been for years. Diana used you as emotional leverage initially, then used Charlotte and Thomas the same way. He stayed out of obligation, not love. Now that the children are grown, that obligation is fulfilled. You're encouraging him to leave his wife. After 40 years of marriage, I'm encouraging him to finally choose happiness, she corrected. We have 20 good years left potentially. Why waste them out of habit? And where do I fit into this plan? I asked, though I already knew the answer. You don't, she said simply. Your presence complicates the narrative. Every time Diana sees you with Robert, it reinforces her victim status. Every time society sees us together, questions arise about our connection. It's cleaner if you remain in New York, focused on your career, maintaining distance from Boston society. You want me to disappear so you can pretend I never existed. I want you to be practical like me. You have your own life, your own accomplishments. Why cling to a family dynamic that's been broken from the beginning? I leaned back, studying the woman who had given birth to me, her perfect posture, her calculated expressions, her utter detachment from the emotional devastation she'd caused. What if I refuse? What if I decide to fight for my place in the family? Catherine's laugh was genuine this time. With what leverage? Diana will never truly accept you. You're the living embodiment of her greatest humiliation. Robert is weak-willed and conflict avoidant. Your siblings have already chosen sides. You seem very confident for someone who could be exposed with a single social media post. Her expression hardened. Don't threaten me, Alexis. I've navigated corporate politics across 3 continents. You're playing a game you don't understand. Actually, I said, reaching into my purse, I think I understand perfectly. I placed my phone on the table between us, its screen showing a recording app with the timer running. I've been recording our entire conversation. Catherine's carefully composed expression faltered. That's illegal in Massachusetts without consent. Actually, I checked the law carefully. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state for telephone recordings, but for in-person conversations it's only illegal if the recording is done secretly. I've had my phone visible on the table the entire time. Her eyes darted to the device. What exactly do you think you've accomplished? I now have recorded evidence of you admitting to manipulating my father, demanding my exclusion from family events, and attempting to break up a 40-year marriage for your own benefit, I summarized. Not to mention your callous admission that you abandoned your child for career advancement. No one will care, Catherine insisted, though her confident demeanor had cracked. These are private family matters. The board of Morgan Investments might care. My father's clients who trust him with their life savings based on his family values image might care. The charity boards you've been cultivating since your return to Boston might care. I stopped the recording and returned the phone to my purse. This meeting is over, Catherine, but our conversation is just beginning. As I stood to leave, she grabbed my wrist. What do you want? The question came out sharp, desperate. The truth, I replied, pulling my arm free. Acknowledged by everyone involved, and my place in the family restored. You're making a mistake, she called after me. They'll never accept you no matter what evidence you have. I turned back one last time. Maybe not. But at least the choice will be based on truth, not your manipulations. As I walked out of the cafe into the bright Boston afternoon, I felt a strange mixture of dread and determination. The confrontation had revealed more than just Catherine's agenda. It had shown me exactly what I was fighting for and exactly what I was fighting against. My hotel room transformed into an investigative command center over the next 3 days. Laptop open documents spread across the desk and bed notes covering every available surface. Boston's summer rainstorms provided a fitting backdrop as I methodically built a case that would force the truth into the open. Catherine's recorded confession formed the cornerstone, but I needed more evidence that would be irrefutable to my family, and devastating if made public. Years of analyzing financial data had taught me to follow paper trails, to seek patterns in seemingly disconnected information, and to never trust a single source. I started with my father's public financial disclosures required by his position as CEO of Morgan Investments. 10 years of annual reports downloaded from the SEC website revealed nothing unusual at first glance. But cross-referencing them with property records, accessed through the Suffolk County Registry of Deeds, uncovered the first anomaly. A luxury condominium in Beacon Hill, purchased 8 months ago through an LLC called KR Ventures. The LLC's registration documents listed a single member, Catherine Reynolds. The down payment, however, traced back to a wire transfer from an offshore account connected to my father's personal holdings. "Gotcha?" I whispered, adding the documents to my growing file. Next came emails. My father had always used the same password structure for his personal accounts: Charlotte's birthday followed by Thomas's birthday. He'd shown me once when I needed to access family vacation photos, never considering I might someday use it against him. I hesitated before typing it in, the ethical line clear in my mind. But the memory of being physically pushed from my family home, of decades of unexplained rejection, strengthened my resolve. The password worked. His email exchange with Catherine over the past year told a story of emotional affair gradually intensifying. Early messages maintained a pretense of casual reconnection, but by 3 months ago they'd evolved into intimate daily correspondence. "Diana doesn't understand the pressures I'm under." "You always did," he'd written in March. "We could have had a different life, Robert." "It's not too late to choose again," Catherine had replied. Most damning were the emails discussing me, my father, sharing personal details about my career, my relationships, my visits home. Catherine's responses strategically planted doubts, subtly undermining his perception of me. "Alexis seems to demand so much of your attention during her visits," she wrote after Easter. "Diana mentioned how exhausting it is for everyone. It might be best if there's some distance for a while," my father had responded. "Until we figure out this situation between us." I documented everything, fighting back tears. The betrayal cut deeper with each discovery. Financial records came next. My father's business partner, James, had always treated me like a daughter, mentoring me through college and my early career. His shock when I called him was palpable. "Alexis, what's going on? Your father said you were taking some time away from the family." "That's one way to put it," I replied. "James, I need to ask you something. Has Dad been moving money around lately? Any unusual transactions?" The silence confirmed my suspicion before he spoke. "I'm not comfortable discussing this. James, please." "It involves Catherine Reynolds." His sharp intake of breath told me everything. "How do you know that name?" "Because she's my biological mother, and she's manipulating my father into pushing me out of the family while he financially supports her. I need your help." After another long pause, James agreed to meet me. The documents he brought to our coffee shop meeting completed the picture. Nearly $500,000 transferred to Catherine's accounts over the past 6 months, disguised as consulting fees but with no corresponding services rendered. Money that should have gone to family investments, including my siblings' trust funds, diverted to support Catherine's lifestyle. "The board doesn't know," James confirmed. "Neither does your mother." I've tried talking to him, but he insists it's temporary. It's fraud, I stated flatly. Technically, yes, James admitted. But it's his company, his money. Not entirely. Those funds were allocated for family trusts. James rubbed his temples wearily. What are you planning to do with this information, Alexis? Force the truth into the open, I answered, before she destroys everything my family has built. My investigation expanded beyond financial records. A former colleague now working at Catherine's marketing firm shared gossip about Catherine's pattern of attaching herself to wealthy, influential men at each firm where she'd worked. 3 marriages, each ending when she'd extracted maximum benefit and moved to a more advantageous position. She's known for it, my source texted. London, Paris, Milan, same story every time. Finds a powerful man, creates dependency, moves on when she's secured what she needs. Most surprisingly, I found 2 other families she'd manipulated in similar ways, reconnecting with ex-partners decades later, insinuating herself into their lives while driving wedges between family members. Both men had ended up divorced, financially diminished, and eventually discarded when Catherine found better opportunities. Martina Olofsson, ex-wife of Catherine's second Swedish victim, agreed to speak with me by video call. She is like, how do you say, a spider, the elegant older woman explained. Very patient, very careful in building her web. By the time Henrik realized what was happening, she had isolated him from everyone who would have warned him. Did you try to fight back? I asked. Of course. But she had created such elaborate stories about me: mental instability, financial irresponsibility, jealousy. No one believed me until it was too late. Martina's expression softened. You are her daughter, this must be very difficult. Biologically only, I clarified. She gave me up at birth. That is her way, Martina nodded. She takes what she wants, discards what doesn't serve her purpose. Be careful, Alexis. She is more dangerous when threatened. Armed with comprehensive evidence of Catherine's manipulation, financial impropriety, and pattern of behavior, I consulted with a lawyer friend specializing in family law and fraud cases. Beth reviewed my findings in her downtown office, expression growing more troubled with each page. This is serious, Alexis, she said finally. The financial misappropriation alone could trigger SEC investigation. The personal aspects, the lying, the manipulation, that's beyond my purview, but the evidence is compelling. Is it enough, I asked, to force acknowledgement of the truth? More than enough, Beth confirmed. The question is, what do you want to happen next? Full legal action could destroy your father's company, your family's reputation, everything. I considered the question carefully. I don't want destruction. I want honesty. I want Catherine's influence removed before she does irreparable damage. And I want my place in the family, acknowledged, whatever that means going forward. Then I suggest a controlled confrontation, Beth advised. Present the evidence to all parties simultaneously so no one can manipulate the narrative. Make your terms clear. Give them the choice between truth within the family or public exposure. The plan crystallized in my mind. I would invite everyone to neutral territory, my apartment in the city, where I had control of the environment. I'd present my evidence methodically, irrefutably. No emotional appeals, just facts. I sent identical text messages to my parents, siblings, and Catherine. I have conclusive evidence about Catherine's manipulation, the financial fraud, and my true parentage. Meeting at my apartment Saturday at 2 p.m. Attendance is non-negotiable unless you prefer I take this evidence public. This is your only opportunity to resolve this privately. The responses came quickly: shock, anger, denial. Only Charlotte's message showed a hint of wavering. Is this really necessary? Can't we just move forward? Not without truth, I replied. For once in our family, we need to face reality. Catherine's response was predictably threatening. You're making a serious mistake that will hurt everyone involved, including yourself. I didn't dignify it with a reply. Instead, I carefully prepared my apartment, setting up a conference area in the living room, organizing my evidence files, and preparing a professional presentation that would leave no room for denial. The night before the confrontation, I stood at my window overlooking the Boston skyline, the compass that should have been my father's anniversary gift heavy in my hand. Regardless of tomorrow's outcome, nothing would ever be the same. The family I'd known was already gone, transformed by truth into something I couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of clarity. Whatever happened next would be built on honesty, not deception. That alone made the fight worthwhile. Saturday arrived with unnerving, calm, bright sunshine streaming through my apartment windows, the distant sounds of Boston weekend traffic floating up from below. I'd prepared meticulously evidence files organized on the dining table, laptop connected to the TV screen for presentations, recorded conversations, queued up even bottled water and coffee, arranged for what would undoubtedly be a lengthy confrontation. The doorbell rang at precisely 2 p.m. My mother and father arrived first, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and defiance. Diana looked like she hadn't slept in days, her usual perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Robert maintained his businessman composure, though the tightness around his eyes betrayed his tension. "Alexis," he began formally, "this dramatic summons was unnecessary. Whatever you think you know, save it for when everyone's here," I interrupted, gesturing them toward the seating area. Charlotte and Thomas arrived minutes later, both avoiding my eyes as they entered. Charlotte clutched her husband James's arm like a lifeline while Thomas came alone, Melissa apparently unwilling to be drawn into family drama. "Is this an intervention?" Thomas attempted to joke, the words falling flat in the charged atmosphere. In a manner of speaking, I replied coolly. "Catherine arrived last 15 minutes late, a power move designed to establish control." She swept in wearing an impeccably tailored cream suit, projecting confidence and authority. "This is highly irregular, Alexis," she remarked, surveying the room. "Though I appreciate your initiative, it's the Reynolds in you." My father visibly flinched at her words while my mother's face drained of color. "Please sit down," I directed, my voice steadier than I expected. "We have a lot to cover." Once everyone was seated, my parents and siblings on the sectional sofa, Catherine in an armchair slightly apart, I remained standing, taking the position of authority. "For 34 years I've lived with the consequences of decisions made before I was born. Decisions that shaped my identity, my place in this family, and relationships that should have been founded on truth but were instead built on lies." "Alexis, please," my mother interrupted. "This isn't necessary." "It's long overdue," I countered, turning to face the TV screen where I displayed the first document, my original birth certificate with Catherine listed as mother. "Let's establish facts first. I am the biological daughter of Robert Morgan and Catherine Reynolds, born during my father's separation from Diana and legally adopted by Diana when I was 3 months old. Is there anyone here who disputes this?" Silence settled over the room. Catherine examined her manicure with affected boredom, while my father stared at his hands. Charlotte looked genuinely pained, while Thomas appeared uncomfortable but unsurprised. "Good," I continued, "because denial is no longer an option." I methodically presented my evidence, the timeline of Catherine's reappearance in Boston, email exchanges showing her deliberate manipulation, financial records documenting my father's support, and testimonials from her previous victims establishing her pattern of behavior. In the past year alone, I stated, displaying bank transfers on screen, nearly $500,000 has been diverted from Morgan family investments to Catherine's accounts disguised as consulting fees. Thomas sat forward abruptly. "What, Dad, is this true?" "It's complicated," my father muttered. "Temporary loans for her new business venture. Loans require documentation, repayment terms, and board approval when they involve company funds," I pointed out. "None of which exists here." "You've been spying on me," my father demanded, anger finally breaking through his controlled facade. "Hacking my accounts, that's illegal, Alexis." "So is fraud," I countered evenly. "Would you prefer to discuss this with the SEC instead?" Catherine maintained her composure, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped her purse. This is absurd. Robert was helping an old friend establish herself after a difficult divorce. There's nothing improper about that. Then why hide it? I challenged, playing the recording of Catherine admitting her demands for my exclusion from family events. Her voice filled the apartment crystal clear as she detailed her ultimatum and her plans to separate my father from his family. Diana's quiet sobs punctuated the playback. Charlotte moved to comfort her, while Thomas stared at Catherine with undisguised revulsion. "You manipulative bitch," he breathed. "Watch your language," my father snapped automatically. "Are you serious right now, Dad?" Thomas exploded. "You've been stealing from our family trusts to fund your ex-girlfriend who demanded we cut our sister out of our lives, and you're worried about my language." "I didn't steal anything," my father protested. "Those funds were temporarily reallocated. Without board approval, without family knowledge, without documentation," I interjected. "The definition of misappropriation." "I trusted Catherine," he said, his voice smaller now. "She said she needed help getting established again in Boston, while she was systematically working to isolate you from your family," I added, displaying more emails where Catherine had deliberately undermined each of us in turn. Creating scenarios where Diana appeared mentally unstable, Charlotte seemed manipulative, Thomas irresponsible, and me, demanding and emotionally draining. "I did nothing of the sort," Catherine insisted. "I simply provided perspective on unhealthy family dynamics I observed." I played another recording, this one from our cafe meeting, where Catherine explicitly outlined her agenda to separate my father from his family, starting with me as the most complicated connection. Charlotte stood suddenly. "I can't believe I fell for this. All those times you suggested Alexis was trying to monopolize Dad's attention or get special treatment. I actually believed you were looking out for our family. I was protecting all of you from unnecessary complications," Catherine maintained smoothly. "Alexis's presence raises questions about family timelines that could damage your parents' standing in the community." "My presence exposes your abandonment," I corrected. "It reveals that you chose career over motherhood, then conveniently returned when it benefited you." "I made a practical decision," Catherine repeated, her practiced justification. "One that allowed both of us to thrive. One that allowed you to walk away with no consequences," I countered. "Until now." I turned to my parents, who sat shell-shocked on the sofa. "Mom," I said, deliberately using the term "I understand now why my presence has been painful for you. Every day, I was a reminder of Dad's betrayal of a period you'd rather forget. I can't imagine how difficult that's been." Diana looked up, tears streaming down her face. "I tried, Alexis. In the beginning, I truly tried to love you as my own. But every time Robert gave you special attention, every time someone commented on how you had his eyes, his intelligence, it reopened the wound." "I know," I said gently, "and I'm not here to blame you for feelings you couldn't control. But the dishonesty, the secrets, they poisoned what relationship we might have had." I turned to my father, my voice hardening. "You, however, had a choice. Every day for 34 years you chose deception over honesty. You allowed Mom to silently resent me without explanation. You kept my biological mother a secret even when I deserved to know the truth." "I was trying to protect everyone," he insisted weakly. "You were protecting yourself," Thomas interjected. "Your reputation, your comfort, your freedom from consequences. Same as always. And when Catherine reappeared," I continued, "you chose to betray your family all over again, financially, emotionally, completely." "That's not fair," my father protested. "Catherine and I have history, intellectual connection. She understands aspects of me that Diana never has." My mother's sharp intake of breath cut through the room like a knife. "After 40 years of marriage, raising your children, supporting your career, that's what you have to say?" Diana's voice trembled with fury more than grief now. "That she understands you better." "Diana," he began, but she cut him off. "No, Robert. No more explanations, no more excuses. I've spent decades making peace with your betrayal, convincing myself it was a youthful mistake. But you never stopped, did you? You've been emotionally unfaithful, our entire marriage, always keeping a piece of yourself reserved for her. Catherine's calculated smile confirmed Diana's words, adding salt to the wound. I want a divorce, Diana said with sudden clarity. I should have done this 34 years ago. Mom, are you sure? Charlotte asked, though her expression suggested she supported the decision. More certain than I've been about anything in decades, Diana replied, removing her wedding ring and placing it on the coffee table with quiet finality. My father seemed to collapse inward, the consequences of his actions finally landing with full force. Diana, please, we can work through this. There's nothing to work through, she replied. It's over. Catherine seized the opportunity, moving to my father's side with practiced sympathy. Robert, this is for the best. Now you're free to what he interrupted. To watch my family disintegrate, to lose my company when the board learns about financial impropriety, to start over at 64 with nothing but regrets. Catherine's expression hardened. Don't be dramatic. We'll weather this storm together just as we planned. There was no we in your plans, I pointed out, displaying the evidence from her previous relationships. Just as there was no we when you left Boston with a 2-month-old baby 34 years ago. You use people until they've served their purpose, then discard them. Dad was just the next target. For the first time, Catherine's composure cracked completely. You ungrateful little. She caught herself, but too late. Everything I did was strategic. Everything I built was through intelligence and calculation. I don't expect emotional creatures like you to understand. We understand perfectly, Thomas replied coldly. You're a predator. Catherine gathered her purse, her dignity in tatters. This family was fractured long before I returned. I simply exposed the cracks. No, Charlotte countered. You deliberately widened them. You manipulated all of us, starting with Alexis's exclusion from the anniversary party, your first test of control. A test we failed, Thomas added, shame evident in his expression. We should have questioned it, Lex. I'm sorry we didn't. Catherine moved toward the door. This little family therapy session has been enlightening, but ultimately changes nothing. Robert and I have plans that extend beyond your dramatic revelations. My father finally found his voice. There are no plans, Catherine. Not anymore. She froze, turning slowly. Excuse me. It's over, he stated flatly. Whatever this was, reconnection affair manipulation, it ends today. After everything I've done for you, she hissed. After the sacrifices I've made. What sacrifices? I challenged. You've taken money, status, and connections while systematically destroying his family. Where exactly is the sacrifice? Catherine's mask slipped, completely revealing the calculation beneath. You'll regret this, Robert. All of you will. I have enough information to destroy Morgan Investments with a single phone call. I stepped forward, holding up a USB drive. And I have enough evidence to have you investigated for fraud, extortion, and blackmail. Your choice. We locked eyes, biological mother and daughter, both recognizing the steel in the other. After a long moment, she broke contact, smoothing her suit jacket with affected casualness. This isn't over, she warned before walking out the door. In her wake, silence settled over the apartment. My family, broken, divided, but finally honest, looked at each other as if seeing clearly for the first time in decades. Diana spoke first, her voice steady despite her tears. I owe you an apology, Alexis. For every moment I allowed my pain to overshadow my responsibility to you. For every time I failed to love you as you deserved. And I owe you one for putting you in that impossible position to begin with, I acknowledged. No one should have to raise their husband's child from an affair, but I agreed to it, she said softly. I made a choice, and you deserved better than my resentment. My father remained silent, his world collapsing around him. What happens now? Charlotte asked, the question hanging heavily in the air. I surveyed the wreckage of our family mythology, the painful truth finally exposed after decades of deception. We start over, I suggested. with honesty this time. 6 months passed before I could walk into my mother's new townhouse without feeling like a visitor. Diana had purchased the contemporary 2-bedroom in Cambridge after the divorce was finalized, using her settlement to create a space entirely her own for the first time in her adult life. Modern artwork, including several of Charlotte's paintings, hung on walls she'd painted herself in soft blues and greens. No trace remained of the traditional decor my father had always preferred. "These holiday cookies are incredible," I said, accepting the plate she offered as I settled onto her sofa. "You've been experimenting again." "Orange zest and cardamom," she confirmed with a small smile. "The baking channel I subscribe to has been life-changing." The transformation in Diana went beyond her living space. Freed from decades of resentment and pretense, she'd begun therapy, taken up painting classes alongside Charlotte, and even started dating recently. A development that had initially shocked all of us but now seemed natural, even overdue. "Thomas texted that he's running late," she said, checking her phone. "Something about last-minute Christmas shopping." "Some things never change," I laughed. My brother's perpetual lateness remained a constant in our evolving family dynamic. Charlotte emerged from the kitchen with a tray of mulled wine. "Remember when he showed up an hour late to his own graduation party, Dad was?" She stopped abruptly, the mention of our father still causing momentary awkwardness. Diana filled the silence smoothly. "Your father called yesterday. He settled into the Seattle office and says the distance from Boston has been good for him." The aftermath of the confrontation had been seismic for everyone, but especially for Robert. The board of Morgan Investments, informed of the financial improprieties by James and me, had removed him as CEO while allowing him to maintain a diminished role in a different branch office across the country. Catherine had disappeared from Boston's social circles, entirely reportedly surfacing in Chicago with a newly divorced banking executive. "Is he coming east for Christmas?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "No," Diana replied gently. "But he asked if you might consider a video call. He's been seeing a therapist too, apparently." I nodded noncommittally, still navigating the complex emotions surrounding my father. The man I'd idolized throughout childhood had been exposed as deeply flawed, his weakness and deception causing ripple effects that damaged everyone who loved him. Forgiveness remained a work in progress. The doorbell rang, announcing Thomas's arrival. He burst in with an armload of brightly wrapped packages and a broad smile that momentarily transported us all back to happier Christmas mornings. "Sorry I'm late," he announced unnecessarily. "Mall was a nightmare." "We're shocked," Charlotte deadpanned, helping him with the packages. The four of us gathered around Diana's dining table for our new monthly tradition, family dinner without secrets or pretense. The early attempts had been stilted, painful exercises in rebuilding trust, but gradually the conversations had become easier, more genuine. "How's the therapy practice going?" I asked Thomas, who had recently completed his psychology licensure. "Busy," he admitted. "Turns out a lot of people need help processing family trauma. Can't imagine why." We all laughed, the ability to find humor in our shared pain a recent and welcome development. "And your promotion?" Diana asked me. "James mentioned the board was impressed with your presentation." "VP of Strategic Analysis," I confirmed. "Starting in January." "At Morgan Investments," Charlotte marveled. "After everything that happened, that takes courage, Lex." "The company isn't Dad," I said simply. "And James has done an amazing job rebuilding its ethical foundation." Dinner conversation flowed naturally as we shared updates about our lives. Charlotte's art gallery was featuring her work in a spring exhibition. Thomas had finally proposed to Melissa. Diana had joined a hiking group that was planning a trip to the Southwest in March. As we moved to the living room for coffee and dessert, Diana disappeared, briefly returning with a small gift-wrapped box that she handed to me. "It's not Christmas yet," I protested. "This isn't a Christmas gift," she explained. "It's something I should have given you years ago." Inside the box lay a delicate silver locket. When opened, it revealed a tiny photograph of me as a newborn. The hospital took this the day you were born, Diana said softly. Before I met you, before the adoption, Catherine gave me a copy, I think, to prove you were Robert's child. I've kept it all these years, even when I couldn't. Even when things were difficult between us. Tears filled my eyes as I studied the image of my infant self, unaware of the complicated path ahead. You were so small, Diana continued. When Catherine brought you to our house that first day, I was terrified I wouldn't know how to care for you. But you looked up at me with Robert's eyes, and despite everything, I felt a connection. What happened? I asked, gently voicing the question that had haunted me for months. When did that change? Diana sighed, her expression thoughtful rather than defensive. It wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 tiny moments when my own insecurity and pain overwhelmed my better intentions. Every milestone, every father-daughter moment, was both beautiful and painful to witness. I always sensed something was wrong, I admitted. But I blamed myself, thinking I'd failed you somehow. You never failed me, Alexis, she said firmly. I failed you, and I'm so deeply sorry for that. Charlotte and Thomas, witnessing this exchange, remained respectfully silent. We had all been damaged by the family's secrets in different ways. Charlotte through the pressure to be the real daughter, Thomas by being caught between warring loyalties, me by never truly belonging. I've been thinking about family a lot, Thomas said after a while. About what makes one authentic versus performative. And Charlotte prompted. I think it's choice, he concluded. Biology creates connections, but active choice maintains them. Like what we're doing now, choosing to rebuild despite having every reason to walk away from each other. Some relationships can't be salvaged, I observed, thinking of my father and Catherine. Some betrayals cut too deep, true, Diana acknowledged. But those worth saving require work from everyone involved. Like us? Charlotte asked. Exactly like us, Diana confirmed. Family isn't static. It evolves, adapts. Sometimes it breaks apart and reforms in stronger configurations. We raised our glasses in silent acknowledgement of this truth. Later, as the evening wound down, I stood on Diana's balcony, gazing at the Cambridge skyline. Thomas joined me, leaning against the railing. You doing okay? He asked. Really okay, not the analyst has everything under control okay. I smiled, appreciating his perception. I'm getting there. Some days are harder than others. Dad asks about you every time we talk, he ventured cautiously. He regrets everything, Lex. I know, I sighed. And someday I'll be ready to hear that from him directly. Just not yet. Thomas nodded, understanding. No timeline on healing. That's what I tell my patients. We stood in companionable silence for a moment before he spoke again. You know, finding out you're technically my half-sister changes absolutely nothing about how much I love you, or how annoying I find you. I laughed, shoving his shoulder playfully. Likewise, you perpetually late disaster. Inside, I could see Charlotte helping Diana arrange photographs on a new gallery wall, the images, a careful curation of genuine family moments rather than staged perfection. My place among them no longer felt tentative or conditional. The journey from exclusion to belonging had been painful, the truth both destructive and liberating. Catherine's manipulation had nearly succeeded in erasing me completely, but had ultimately forced honesty that, while devastating, created space for authentic connection. I thought of the compass I'd eventually given to my father before he left for Seattle, a family heirloom symbolizing the need to find one's true direction even when lost. Whether he would find his way back to meaningful relationship with his children remained uncertain, but the possibility existed now where only deception had lived before. My phone chimed with a text from Emily, checking in as she often did since the confrontation. Her steadfast support had been instrumental in my healing process. Her willingness to speak truth when everyone else maintained silence, a model for authentic relationship. Family is who shows up, I texted back. Thank you for always showing up. Diana appeared at the balcony door. Charlotte suggesting board games. Fair warning, she's still ruthlessly competitive. Some things never change, Thomas grinned. And some things change completely, I added, following them inside to the warmth of family, imperfect, wounded, but finally honest. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed your understanding of your identity or relationships? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Family dynamics can be incredibly complex, and sometimes sharing our stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to hear more real-life stories about family transformation and healing, and give this video a thumbs up if it resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to truth, and remember, authentic connection begins with honesty no matter how difficult. Until next time.